Now, ladies and gentlemen, it's only fitting that Australia's first female Prime Minister, the first female leader of the Labour Party and a beacon of hope for future female politicians, gets a vote of thanks from a legend of the Labour Party. The most electorally successful Labour Party leader in history, the man who, to this date, still holds the highest ever AC Nielsen approval rating. Please join me in welcoming the Honourable Bob Hawke, AC GCL.
David, Uncle Lewis, Luigi, all other distinguished guests. I'm not going to go through the list. And most particularly, thank you to you, ladies and gentlemen. We are so proud at the University of South Australia and the Hawke Prime Ministerial Centre of the continuing enthusiastic support we always receive from you people. Without that support, we wouldn't be able to maintain the enthusiasm with which we are doing what we think is an important job in this community. So thank you very much indeed. David, I just want to say something to you. One about the collective for a meeting of Vice-Chancellors. There is in fact on record a comment on this. There was a meeting of Vice-Chancellors in Sri Lanka, in Colombo, and some of you will know the language of that country. And the question was asked, what is the collective of a meeting of Vice-Chancellors? And someone said, a lack of principles. The story is not apocryphal, but it's not accurate. Julia, you said in the early part of your magnificent speech that you had looked through the list of speakers and there were many shoes and big shoes to fill and you were apprehensive about it. My dear Julia, you need have had no apprehension whatsoever, because as one who has attended all the lectures, there has been none more compassionate and directed to real problems of the Australian people than the one you delivered tonight. Some of the statistics which you gave us are truly staggering and appalling. That figure for 2016 of 2,866 people who committed suicide last year, almost 8 a day, is truly horrifying and should move the conscience of all of us. I thank you for the well-deserved tribute that you paid to Jeff Kennett. While he's on the other side of politics to me, no Australian has done more to try and awaken the conscience of his country to the problems of mental health, suicide, than Jeff. And I'm thrilled, Julia, that he asked you to become chairman of Beyond Blue. He couldn't have made a better choice. before I come back to that, I just go back to the question of education. My judgment is, and this is not a biased judgment, I try to be as objective about these things as it is possible to be, but it is my unqualified judgment that history will be very kind to you and your government, Julia. You governed in more difficult circumstances probably than any other Prime Minister. You brought to that important role a first-class mind, great determination, commitment and compassion. But you suffered under enormous difficulties from some of your colleagues, one in particular. And in those very difficult circumstances, as David indicated, you were able to get through a lot of legislation and a lot of important changes. And history will record that not only your own generation but subsequent generations have much to be grateful for to Julia Gillard. What you did in the area of education in particular was extremely important. It's been detailed to some extent by David, but you have continued that now with your work as Chairman of the Global Partnership for Education. This is a magnificent job that you're doing because, again, the statistics are staggering. The 200 or 300 million kids who don't get an education and the extra hundreds of billions who, while they do get an education, it's so poor that they come out of it not being able to read or write. And that you are working so hard, as I know you are, involving very much travel, to try and raise the consciousness of the world's political leaders to devote more resources, not just financial resources, but human resources, to closing this gap and trying to produce a world in which every child will have the opportunity of a decent education is truly a noble one, and we thank you for what you are doing in that regard. I don't want to go on too long, my friends. I simply want to say again the sorts of things I said as Prime Minister, that if we're going to optimise our chances of having a decent country in which everyone will have a fair go, irrespective of their income or that of their parents, then we have to look at our fellow Australians and say, we're not only fellow Australians, but we depend upon one another. We have to cooperate with one another. Sure, we'll have our political differences, and that is the essence of a democracy. But we must be united in one thing, and that is that governments of all persuasions must do their best to bring Australians together so that we can optimise our resources and produce a better country. This is not only important for us as Australians, but I want to emphasise something that I do in all my speeches these days, and that is that we live at a unique point in human history. Because of the flowering technological and scientific genius of mankind, for the first time we've reached a point where we can do one of two things. On the one hand, we can lift the standard and quality of life of all mankind, or on the other, we can destroy life on this planet as we know it, either through climate change or the use of nuclear weapons. These are the awesome paths that lie before us. And whether or not we take the first of those paths or degenerate into the tragedy of the second depends upon us having people in our community like Julia Gillard. Thank you, Julia.
I hate the way they make me talk after him. I would like again to thank Bob personally for his support of the university and the Bob Hawke Prime Ministerial Centre at the University of South Australia. And I know that if they ran another Nielsen poll tonight, you'd be rated just as high, if not higher, than you were in the 1990s. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we have a little surprise, little treat in store for you. So if you have time, please remain seated. But please join me in formally acknowledging Bob Hawke as he leaves the stage.